Okay, and if you need to use this or want to use this, you're welcome to. Sure, you've used one of those before.
Okay, so this would be very quick and dirty because I want to see what Dave has been doing. So what you're seeing actually on the screen right now is an 1845 double box camera from the collection of the George Eastman Museum in Rochester. And basically any kind of glass plate or anything else could have been stuck on the back of this particular camera. So basically the issues behind glass plates goes back really to the very beginnings of modern photography. Our expectations as 20th century, 21st century digital photographers and what was available to people in the 1840s and 50s were very different. We all expected the picture to be honest. It would show you what was really there and accurate. But a big issue was reproducibility. We take it for granted that we can take a picture on our cell phone and send it out to every person on the planet if they are our friends. But that was a kind of big issue because the earliest photographic methods, and I've got the three people that I'm going to talk about very quickly, Daguerre, Fox Talbot, both really had issues with making multiple copies of their images because the cameras weren't thinking and were not prepared to do that kind of work. So if you start with Daguerre and the famous daguerreotype, and I'm actually going to pass some things around in a moment so you folks play with it. The thing about daguerreotypes is that they were one-offs. You had the copper plate in the camera, the image was taken on the silver emulsion. You went through the crazy poisonous process of reproducing it, which included, among other things, boiling mercury, which sounds like a whole lot of fun, doesn't it? And that was it. You had one copy and you could not reproduce it without either getting the subject back or taking a picture of the picture, which was kind of like, not really a happening thing very often. At the same time that Daguerre was working on this process, you had Fox Talbot in Britain, who was making negatives out of paper. And what he would do is he would take an exposure, and what you're seeing on your left is an original paper negative. Where light struck the paper, it would turn dark. Where light did not strike the paper, it would stay light. And then you would make a second copy using the negative as your image, pressed against another piece of sensitized paper, and you would get a positive. So what you're seeing here is a negative and a positive taken out of the windows of Laycock Abbey. It's always nice to own your own abbey, isn't it? And Fox Talbot did. Okay. The trouble is that you were not only getting the image you wanted, you were getting the texture of the paper. And things were done. The negative would be dipped in hot wax or it would be oiled to give you a little more translucency, but you're still getting the grain of the paper. So while the pictures could be quite lovely, and here again, you have a negative and a positive. And by the time Fox Talbot published his famous book, The Pencil of Nature, they could be pretty good, but they could never really be sharp because you always have the texture of basically handmade paper. You're seeing all the fibers in the way. So what was really wanted was a truly transparent substrate. And the answer was glass. Dimensionally stable, perfectly clear, kind of fragile. But the question is, how are you going to get your photographic emulsion to stick to the glass? And the first thing that was tried was egg white. Okay, and you hear people talk about albumin prints because basically egg white was clear. There were lots of eggs kicking around. I've seen some really weird numbers about how many eggs the French used to make photographs in the middle of the 19th century. The numbers are staggering. It's okay, it works, but it's not terribly sensitive. And in fact, albumin worked better as a way of holding the emulsion onto paper. So you hear about albumin prints very often. But what was discovered by this gentleman, Frederick Scott Archer, is that you could use what was called collodion. Now, collodion is nitrocellulose. Let me take a step back. You take cotton, you throw a ball of cotton into nitric acid, and you end up with nitrocellulose, which, among other things, is very explosive, okay? It was, in fact, the first kind of smokeless gunpowder, okay? But you take the nitrocellulose, you dissolve that in either alcohol or ether, and you have collodion. And collodion is really nice to hold the emulsion in place on glass. The trouble is, you had to use the plate before it dried. That's why these are often referred to as wet plates. And the wet plate process really starts in the 1850s, okay? And you have to imagine that you had to sit there and take your plate, and this is before enlargers. So if you wanted an 8x10 print, you had an 8x10 plate. You want an 11x14 print, you had an 11x14 plate. So you're taking this glass plate in a fairly darkened room, and you're trying to take your collodion, which is roughly the consistency of maple syrup, and you're trying to get it evenly on the plate before the stuff dries. And then you got to put it in your camera, take the exposure. And you have to also make sure that it doesn't blow up, because it could blow up a lot. Okay. It's very explosive. Okay. So the other alternative for getting your emulsion to hold still on a glass plate, okay, is invented in 1856, and it's using gelatin to hold the emulsion in place. And don't think lemon jello, think Knox's unflavored gelatin. That's what we're talking about. So you're taking your gelatin, you're putting your emulsion in the wet gelatin, you're drying it on the plate. It's very, very hard to get it to be uniform. And there was a guy by the name of George Eastman, who in 1880 got his first big patent, which was a machine that spread the gelatin emulsion evenly on a glass plate. And this is, years before Kodak as a corporation existed. This is George Eastman working his way through the idea of something that could be prepared in advance, because these plates could be used dry. And eventually, Eastman realizes that you can put the same emulsion on something flexible, like paper or film. And of course, the original films were nitrate-based also, they also kind of blew up. Okay, but there you go. So the first real wet plate process that was practical was in amber type. And for those of you who can't see me, okay, I'm holding up a small amber type that has been disassembled. Okay, a finished amber type looks like this. Okay, the thing is, the amber type image is a negative image. But if you put it in a frame with a piece of black paper or cloth behind it, you see a positive. Because the contrast is so low, you actually can see both. So I'm going to pass around. My disassembled amber type, my assembled amber type. And what you do is when it gets to you, look at it first and then lay it down on a piece of black fabric and see like, oh, there's an image. And just for comparison, I also have a rather scrunchy looking daguerreotype. If you go to a flea market and you're trying to figure out whether you're looking at an amber type or a daguerreotype, you take the thing and you flick it back and forth. And if it's a dag, at some point you'll just see a mirror because you're seeing the silver on the copper. Okay, and an amber type will change tonality, but you never get the full silver. But big plates are hard to do. And as I said, they have to be used while still damp. And if you want to see a modern photographer doing this, most of you are probably familiar with Sally Mann. She did a film in 2004 called What Remains. For reasons I don't understand, the entire thing is available for free on YouTube, and you can watch it. Okay, and you can see her trying to evenly coat an 11 by 14 glass plate with wet collodion, and then taking pictures of her husband before it dries. And let me tell you something, there's no one better than Sally Mann, but my gosh, this is crazy. And as a last thing, I do have, this is a 5 by 7 gelatin plate negative. I do not know the provenance of this. I'm guessing it's the 40s from the little girl's dress, but don't quote me on it. But this is what an actual gelatin modern machine produced, relatively modern machine produced glass plate looks like. Again, I'll pass this around. I will warn you. Okay. Okay, we seeing it? Okay. All right, and you can see it's a negative. For the people who are going to be dealing with this, don't worry about getting your fingerprints on it. It's way past that. And Dave knows, okay. My only, caveat is it's glass and the edges are a little sharp. So be careful. Do you wear gloves when you handle your negatives?
Yes, I do.
Okay, so Dave is saying he wears gloves because he likes his fingers where they are, and very few of these things are improved by having blood on them. So, and again, what you would normally do with this is you can make a contact print. So you're laying it right on your photosensitive paper. Or if you have an enlarger that's big enough, you could make this bigger. But Dave's got a much higher tech way of dealing with these. And unless there are any particular questions, on with the show.
Thank you, Steve.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. So,
And we hide the loading meeting controls. Somehow I need to figure out how to get it show that it does full screen. But the Zoom people are seeing the slides at the bottom of the, are the slides at the bottom showing? That's what I thought. Okay, let me end the
It's on the
show
side
here
of it
for a
too.
minute.
Oh, there you go. Well,
Let me see if I can go to view full screen, if that helps. Enter full screen and then start the slideshow and see if that makes a difference. No. Use slideshow. There we go. Is that the full screen now? Okay, and good.
Yes.
So that what? Okay. And then I'm gonna I need to click on here, and then you can use this to, you can either use the arrow key to the right if you want, or you can use this, either one. And then if you need to, you can, point up here with the center, the little light bright there. So I'm gonna leave the screen right now and David is gonna step in.
Well, thank you. And thank you, Steve. That was a great, where'd you go? That was a great presentation. Very nice, nice. I'm Dave Maloney. I've been in Frederick since 1982 or 81, May of 81. I moved to Shookstown Road from Bowie. I was born in Riverdale, North Dakota. And that is a glass plate that was handed down to me from my grandmother. That's my grandfather, way over there with a pitchfork in his hand. And he's with his siblings and his uncles and his father, my great-grandfather, right there, Ignatius Zeltinger in Tolly, North Dakota, in the windswept prairies. That's my favorite photograph of all. And you can see why. But when I came to Frederick, because I'm so interested in history, I started to attend the Historical Society of Frederick County's monthly meetings. I get to know some folks. And before long, there were a lot of folks asking me to be the president. So I ran unopposed and I won. I ran unopposed again and I won again. So for 4 years, I was president of the Historical Society, and my 3 little boys cursed me for becoming president because I would take them down there because it was just me, them, and Judith, our part-time library or director, keeping the place maintained and cleaned and sorted. And all those weekends, we would push around wooden crates full of glass plate negatives way up in the garret. We had to make room for new stuff. And we had to sweep and clean and dust. And these darn crates of plates were always in our way. So we're moving them around. And after 4 years of my presidency, I went back a couple years later. So it's 40 years ago. I went back and I said, hey, you know all those glass plates up there? You don't know what's on them, do you? And they said, no, we don't. I said, why don't I scan them? So I said, okay, great. So I carried them all home. I bought myself a nice Epson scanner, which I use to this day. And there I went, one at a time, scanning in all these wonderful images of Frederick. So there they have been sitting for 40 years. And I said, well, wait a minute, I can't keep these on my computer. My kids think they're nice, but they don't care. But there are a lot of people out there who do care, including the Historical Society. So when I did start scanning them, I assigned them all a GN number. And we started a database of all these images. And I scanned them in at 600 DPI raw TIFF images, high resolution, and I gave all those files to the Historical Society along with the glass plates. Now, my payment for that was that I could keep a set. I couldn't monetize them, but I could use them however I wanted. So after 40 years, I decided to start posting them on this newfangled Facebook thing. And there was a nice group, some members of which are in the back of the room here. And I wanted to share this information, but more importantly, I wanted to get more information from those in the group who maybe could help me further identify what some of these subjects are. As of yesterday, I'm on a sabbatical from this project because I've run out of everything except portraits. I have portraits of children and women and men and family groups. I have portraits of soldiers and a boxer or two. But I don't have any more of this. Well, they're all unidentified. And I can't put too many unidentifieds onto the Facebook page because, well, people might be interested in the lady's gown or the medals that the soldier's wearing or some other detail. Other than that, they really don't care. So I've stopped posting for a while to give Facebook group a breather. But I think to date, I've posted about 1,100 images that are there are a few portraits. But this, and I also wanted to show you some of the things that I do with the images that aren't in perfect condition. So we'll start with this one. We're on the southwest corner of North Market Street. You know where that is. You can see Trinity Chapel back there. And but this plate has a lot of problems with the emulsion, Tom or Steve. You see the emulsion in the back. The emulsion is just on one side. So when you handle these, you gotta be very careful that you don't disturb the emulsion any more than it already is. So this one is pretty bad shape. So I decided for about 127 images, I decided to enhance them. Now, enhancing means to kind of clean them up, tweak the contrast a little bit, and then format it so that it could fit in an 8x10 frame or a 5x7 frame. Because I was going to plaster these all over my house. And Barbara says, man, no, you're not. So, a quick question?
Yeah, do you think that maybe that's more like restoring them rather than enhancing them? Because enhancing them means to change and restoring them.
Okay. I don't know what the technical term is, but I do know that I make it look a little bit nicer when I'm done with it. Like this is the after shot. So I just use a Photoshop type of software that allows me to basically take a stamp of the pattern I want and move it over the buggered up part. So I basically replaced all the damage with pieces taken from someplace else, cloning it. Oh, I like that term, cloning, yeah. So you see the before and the after. But look at the before, you can see the Trinity Chapel way down, or All Saints. You see All Saints down there. You also see the Carlin Hotel. And but what I did is I chopped it off. Well, okay. I have a license to do that because it's my enhanced version. But this is great. You got Rosenhauer and Sons. You got Byerly's Palace of Music. This is the original. You have Independent Hose Company with its cupola. You got a barber pole. You got Park Hotel way down there, and the spire at All Saints. But when I cut it, of course, I removed Park Hotel and the All Saints Episcopal Church. A feature that we see a lot in these is that hanging lamp. A lot of these photographs have that hanging oil lamp way up high there. And the detail of some of these photographs, you can even see the device that burns when it's lit. It's very, very finely detailed. I can zoom in on this and we'll go over an example in a minute. And it amazes me how these glass plates pick up detail. I can zoom in, I can zoom in, I can zoom in closer and closer and closer. And the resolution is great and the detail gets greater and greater. And it's just, I don't know how these photographers did it back then. This is a similar view, but this one is taken in 1870. This one is around 1900. This one is the same view, but about 1870. But now we have the Examiner newspaper. We have Roniker's store that later became Byerly's Palace of Music. That barbershop here is identified as C.G. Myers Barbershop. We got the Trinity Chapel of the Evangelical Reformed Church, Independent Hose. And then, of course, down at the end is All Saints Episcopal. The exact same shot, but look at the conveyances. They got buggies. And you got people all up and down the street. Now, this display from the machine we're using doesn't show the detail that you can see on a high resolution computer screen. This is really great. On the screen. Okay, good, good. Yeah, on mine as well. Yeah, but that's just the nature of the projecting device.
Yes.
What else do I do to these? Here's an example of Quinn Chapel AME Church around 1895 on East 3rd Street. To the left of the church is the parsonage, and to the right is the Zacharias house, which is on the corner of Maxwell Alley and East 3rd Street. What I wanted to point out is what I did to this is I improved the contrast, first of all. Tom, I think over time, these emotions tend to fade. and you lose some of the contrast. But I can tweak it with a computer, but you see this smudge right there? I got rid of that smudge because it's gone. And then there's some overhead wires that are partially picked up in the image. Well, I got rid of them too. See, they're gone too. So that's the kind of thing that I do to these glass plates to clean them up, to make it enhanced, so I can frame it if I wanted to. Now, we have some great photographs of the fire departments and fire engines and firemen, and these are just phenomenal. This is United Fire Company. On the right-hand side, United Fire shows off their fire truck, about 1912. United was organized in 1845 as Mechanics Hose Company. They were later nicknamed the Swamp after they purchased some land that was kind of in a swampy area down by Camera Clique. But to the right is the same fire engine standing in front of the City Hotel on West Patrick Street in downtown Frederick. They love their fire engines, but I love fire engines too. So I cropped United number 3 down, and then I applied a little bit of color just because it's fun to do. This was the brass era. A lot of vehicles had brassy parts. I think my brass is too brassy. I think my red is too red. It's somewhat garish, but I like it. And I don't know how to make it any better. So I live with it. But this is the other kind of thing that I do to just tweak them and make them the way I want them to look. It's kind of fun. Here's another one. When I saw her, I just said, oh, she's screaming for some color. So I gave this unidentified young girl a little bit of color. Now, one of the members of our group, she gave it a shot too. And let me tell you, hers was so much better than mine. But anyway, she might be a little gaudy looking, but she's still cute. These, I think, are some of our favorite series of photos of Frederick. This is just one of many rooftop views. Some people refer to them as skyline views. This one, we're looking up South Carroll Street towards St. John's Catholic Church, or St. John's. We have the Farmers Exchange and Fertilizer, Seeds and Potatoes is on the sign on that large building in the front lower left corner. We are standing in a building. Mark, help me out here. I'm a little confused. We're in a building. It's to the right, but there's rubble here. What was torn down here? Because we're in this building, aren't we? So there was a building there. Yeah, the depot is down off the screen at the bottom. Okay, but if you look closely in the detail, you see a bunch of people standing on a corner and they're gabbing about the project, wondering what the worker's going to do next. And then a gentleman here is walking across the steel bridge, crosses the Carroll Creek at this point. And way down here, you see a train car. And that got people's attention because it indicates that there's trolley tracks here that went up past, well, uptown. But anyway, it's that detail, finding those trolley tracks and that train car. Yeah.
What is the exposure speed on those because of people, froze them? Is it, what kind of exposure?
Oh. Okay. What's the exposure speed on these photographs? I don't know, but I do know But I do know that the subjects have to stand very, very still. We'll show you one picture of a little girl. You can see behind her feet that there's a steel stand. And up behind her back is a prop or a post that she can lean her head against to keep her head real still. Exposure time, Tom, what do you think? Or Steve, what do you think? Exposure time? I don't know, 10 seconds, 15 seconds?
They're walking down the street there and that's-
As time went on, the late 1800s, the time got shorter and shorter. 1900. Oh. Okay. A hundredth of a second? All right. That's a good. Oh, it's, okay, we're past that in time. Okay. All right. Thanks for asking that, because I didn't know. Now we all know. Thank you, Steve.
People, because of people walking there,
Yes.
it's not ugly.
What was that?
Oh, he was saying that the people that we're catching here are not fuzzy. So the shutter speed must have been pretty quick in order to capture them in the moment and not be fuzzy. So yes, the shutter speed was probably, we're thinking maybe about a 100th of a second. Okay. Okay. This is my favorite family. We don't know who he is, but I love him. And he's got his two sons and his wife. And we have other photographs of these people, of this family. And it's apparent that these two women standing are the wives of the two sons. I told Barbara, I've got to print this and put it in the house. And she says, no, you don't.
Can you ask the Zoom people to mute, please?
Okay, we need everybody on Zoom to please mute your,
Except, yes.
yeah, mute your computers so we don't hear the dog barking. This is another one that I really like. This is the courthouse square. We have a couple nice photographs taken into and out from courthouse square. This courthouse square view is from about 1880. You know what's cut off on this view? Oh, no, it's not, it's there. Is that hanging light again? There it is, oil lamp. But this, but Courthouse Square had sheep grazing on it for many, many years, but Colonel McPherson didn't appreciate it, so he installed these cast iron fencing all the way around in 1818, and that railing stayed until 1888, at which time it was removed, and the fountain was put in the square at that time. Beyond the trees, you can see some well-known buildings. Whoops. Of course, this is City Hall now, this large building to the left. Hiding back behind the trees here, this white building with the shutters, that's the Boys Academy. And then next to it, these two are the mirror image McPherson, or the Ross and the McPherson house. Or the Matthias house. Ross and Matthias. Charlie Ross was my, well, I was Charlie Ross's vice president of the Historical Society. This is a great image simply because of the old vehicles. But this is Ideal Garage. You're on 1911. It's now an antique store. It's down on Patrick Street.
Before you move on. The windows upstairs that have the tires above Ideal Garage, that was the original Delaplane.
We've come a long way.
The Camera Clique used to meet in the upper floor there with those tires in the windows. Oh, my gosh.
Isn't that something? Yeah, those tires, those are diamond tires. And the window, again, if you zoom in on these, you can see, you can see tires on display, tire pumps and car jacks. And you can also see a young secretary sitting behind her desk, looking at the cameraman, wondering what's going on. Of course, Ideal Buick now has moved down to Evergreen Point. This is the iconic swinging bridge on North Bent Street. Now, this bridge was built around 1875. It was suspended from cables. Mark, I think you found this bridge on one of the photographs that yeah, one of the sky views. Yeah, you spotted that. I didn't know it was in that photograph. Until 1928, wagons and livestock would travel up and down Bents, and they waited across until this until a bridge was built. But eventually this swinging bridge was dismantled and moved to a different location. The white building here is a really interesting building. That's the old, it's been called the Bent's Mill. It's been called the Zentz Mill. It goes by a couple names, including the Frederick City Mill and the Bruner Mill. The house that I live on is called Bruner's Mill. The property that I live on is called Bruner's Mill because it also once had a mill on it run by the Bruner boys who would walk into town and worked on this mill as well. So it goes by a number of names. If you look behind the mill, you can barely see a raceway. Water was bled off of Carroll Creek, and it runs into the building and then runs back out again and rejoins Carroll Creek here near the bridge. This was been taken, no, there was no electricity yet, but would have been telephone kind of lines, I guess. Yeah, telephone lines. This is another iconic image of Frederick's clustered spires. Again, you can see the oil lamp hanging above the intersection. But if you look really, really close and zoom in, what do you see? That is probably not as evident if you didn't zoom in the upper right-hand corner, or the upper left-hand corner rather, is a zoomed in image of what is in generally the middle of the primary image, which is 2 horse-drawn carriages and that lamp. But you wouldn't have noticed that unless you looked really closely, and you certainly wouldn't have noticed the detail unless you zoomed in. Many of these photographs were taken by the Byerly family, Jacob Byerly, his son, John Charles Byerly, and his son, Charles Byerly. This photograph to the left is a subject inside the Byerly studio, but that was before the studio collapsed in 1917. Workers are down front picking over the bricks, maybe looking for something that's useful, maybe just picking good bricks to reuse elsewhere. But if you look here on the right-hand side, you can see shoring. This building has a lot of problems, and it was eventually torn down. They couldn't restore it as is, and they rebuilt the whole thing, but there are big timbers there to keep the side of that building from falling in. Back to more fire engines now, or fire companies. This is United Fire number 3 again on the left-hand side. And they're again showing off in a different location their earlier fire engine. And on the right-hand side, there, we zoomed in and you can see two boys, one up in the cupola and one poking his head out that little round window. But look at the primary image on the far left and you see a third young man who climbed all the way to the top by the fireman weather vane. Now, let me tell you, that fireman weather vane today, if that were to sell, it would go for a pretty penny. So young men always seem to hang out in front of these fire stations. In the lower image on the right-hand side, you see the men showing off their pumper. But look to the far, far left of this photograph. There's a person peeking out. Maybe she's a proprietor of this store that's vending, looks like vegetables and fruit. This is an example of how detailed these photographs can get. This is Frederick County National Bank. The building was demolished and a new building has since been constructed, but this is on the northwest corner of Market and Patrick Streets. Now, on the primary image on the left-hand side, the red arrow indicates a carved cigar store figurine. It's a woman with a handful of carved cigars, an advertising item. But look at the photograph on the left-hand side. You can see that the figure is there. But if you zoom in, you can see her, but you can also see the base that she's standing on. And look at the cast iron wheels. Look at the detail. It has 4 spokes. Who would have ever thought that you could take a picture from atop a building or from across the street of this large building and get that kind of detail in the distance? This is a Hood College graduation class around 1900, but this is an example of the damage that can be done to the emulsion. Now, when we're separating these plates and we're trying to get them scanned in, we got to be very sensitive to not even flake off what's already flaking off, but rather preserve it. And frankly, I think it makes a pretty nice looking frame for that image of all those young ladies. We got a kick out of this bunch of guys. They seem to roam around the county going to these exciting places dressed to the hilt. They got their suits on, they got their bowlers, they got their street shoes on. They don't have hiking boots and vests on. They don't have hoodies. No, they're dressed to kill. Well, why are they out there? On the right, they're on White Rock. I'm sorry, on the left, they're on White Rock. On the right, at the top, they're waiting around Yellow Springs. And in the lower right, they're having a sip from Braddock Springs up on Braddock Heights. But why are they doing that? Nobody knows. Maybe they were investors who are looking at property that they want to buy. We just don't know. Oh, they sure did. But the fella who's out there on White Rock with his arms extended, it appears that he probably took his coat off and left it lying on this rock right here so he could be more flexible for his climb. We've had some members of the group piece all these faces together. Was that you who did that, right? Yeah. Yeah.
And they actually property around White Rock, despite an expedition going up from property initially, we purchased 15 acres. The speculation was it was a fishing lodge. And there's maybe looking for the homeowner
And you identified them by name,
We identified by name.
all of them?
and
That's awesome.
Index.
Oh, okay, okay. Oh, they were celebrating their purchase on White Rock? Yes, yes. What we're talking about is that all those folks have been identified. So some people on this Facebook group took it upon themselves to do some research, and they discovered who these men are and why they were there. In the case of White Rock, apparently they were looking for property to buy to set up a fishing camp, you think? They were aware of the Hotel of Braddock Heights. Bellarmine Hall up in Blue Ridge Summit. Okay. With that view. Oh, I see. They saw the deed. Louis Otte, O-T-T-E is one of them. Charles Young. One-handed sheriff. Right here. Oh. We have a one-handed sheriff in this photograph. Eli Howe, H-A-U-G-H. Clerk of the court. Yes, yes, go ahead and explain that to the group. And use this if you need it.
I didn't expect to give me a speech today.
Oh, you are.
We go here?
Yeah, but aim up there if you're going to talk about somebody.
Okay, I will. Because interestingly enough, if you look at these photos, you realize that somebody is taking a picture here. And this is not like taking a cell phone. This is a real operation to take a picture. Taking one of these big, enormous things on a tripod. The fellow who took the picture is this fellow right here. And he's in this guy is the same as this guy right here. You guys have heard of, who is the famous photographer in early Frederick County? The family? Byerly.
Yeah.
They had a gentleman they taught named Frank Cray, K-R-E-H.
Okay. Oh,
You ever heard the name?
oh, yeah, he had his own photo studio.
Exactly. Cray is here and here. He was one of the investors in the company and to buy the place. And these guys were all buddies. And he brought his equipment out to take the pictures. So that's Mr. Cray himself.
Oh, be darned.
Yeah, Frank Cray.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah.
These are 8x10s.
So that's 75 pounds of equipment we're talking about.
So they had to carry 75 pounds of equipment, Steve is saying. Yeah, assistance. Yeah, yeah, probably so. Well, thank you. That was very interesting, Mark. Yeah, it's, you see, all this was unknown. And this is one of the primary reasons that I wanted to get these posted. So somebody with the smarts like you guys could do some research and come up with this additional added information. Yeah.
And started from there. So one person identified part of the gentleman as his grandfather.
Yes. Yeah. Once the photos, all these photos are on the Frederick, Maryland Old Photos page, along with these discussions that we're having here. It's all on the Frederick, Maryland Old Photos Facebook page.
Interesting enough, the one-handed sheriff,
Oh, the one-handed sheriff, yeah, what else?
sitting behind his right hand, holding up his spear.
Oh, right here. Now, look also in this lower right. You see a horse and buggy. Now, as a result of these being posted, others posted similar photos of Braddock Springs with different people sitting on the springs and the spring in a different condition. And even at one time, there was a house or maybe a shed up on the hillside here. And then was it you who went and took a most recent photo? Yeah, Mark went up there last month and took a photo of what the place looks like today. And that's another benefit of having such active people in these groups, is that the old photo is great, but if you take a photo today and put it side by side the old photo, it makes it just that much more meaningful. Now, this is Jug Bridge over the Monocacy. Now, I've seen a lot of pictures of Jug Bridge, but I've never seen one with an old car chugging along, crossing over that bridge. This is looking west towards Frederick, where the old Jug used to be. Of course, it's been moved towards closer to the DMV, but this was taken around 1910. The bridge and the Jug were built by a fellow by the name of Leonard Harbaugh. The Rosenstock house can be seen in the distant left, way over there on the ridge line. And the toll house with gate down is shown right here. You can see the gate looks like a horizontal dark line. So the toll house is in business. And the building way in the distant right was used for cattle shows and exhibitions. So this is the area where the Great Frederick Fair came to be established. But once again, if you zoom in on these finely detailed glass plates, you can almost make out the driver's face. This is the daughter of the owner of Myers Livery. I just think this is a wonderfully composed photograph. She's so nicely dressed. She's wearing a hat and she's holding on to two huge horses. And there's a third one in the back. Now, this is another reason why, well, this is one of the primary reasons why I wanted to get these posted, because maybe we can find out who these people are. Of these 4 photographs, the only family who was identified in our records was the John Remsburg family in the upper left. The other 3 photographs, we had no idea who they were until somebody says, "That's my grandfather." That's my grandfather, or that's my family. So now we know who these other 3 are. Not only that, but we know each individual's name for the records. So I think these photographs are just absolutely amazing. By the way, the Staley family, the Staley family photo in the upper right reminds me of 2 photographs I posted about a month ago. They were family portraits. And my daughter is a art student in Northern Virginia, and she specializes in teaching photography. And I pointed out 2 photographs. I don't have them here, but one of them is a young family of a husband and father, or husband and the wife are sitting, and they're surrounded by 7 kids. And the husband, the father and the mother form the base of, looks like a pyramidal structure. And in between them are all these other little figurines, or all these figures, and they're all relating to each other by touching a shoulder or arm around the back, but it looks very animated. And the second photographs is the same number of people, but they're standing like bowling pins, side by side. Very uninteresting. So when they're juxtaposed like that, to see one photograph like that is almost animated. And Julianne says, yes, that's the, if it bends, bend it theory of photography. Bend the elbows, bend the knee, but don't stand stiff. But this one up here reminded me of that. We have a mother and a father and the kids, and they're touching and they're bending, and it looks very animated almost. We have a friend of the family named Neil Markey, my daughter's age. And I sent her this picture of the Markey family. She was so excited. She sent it off to Neil. Now, Neil and his side know all about it.
Just
Got it.
click,
Okay.
then it'll go again. Okay.
Isn't this a wonderful picture? This is Luther Potts, and he's holding John Francis Byerly, who was the son of the photographer, taken in about 1909. If you zoom in, you see all those props at his feet. You got a little wagon and a wheelbarrow and a, looks what it, I can't read that. It looks like maybe a milk wagon being toy, a horse-drawn toy. You have a rake. Somebody posted that this that Luther looks like he's wearing a Union enlisted man's jacket. The buttons are popped off or missing. He has his collar being held together with some sort of a pin. A pin. His hat has some holes in it. He looks a little rough. His clothing looks a little rough, but I just think this is an awesome photograph taken by Byerly. What could possibly go wrong? On the left, you have a little boy with guns and fireworks and big firecrackers, and then on the far right, that's the result of playing with fire, literally. He's got bandages on his head. He's got bandages on his feet. He's got wounds on his legs. This is just a hilarious little triptych. There's Uncle Billy, pretzel man. I had no idea what this photograph on the left, or who this person was in the photograph on the left. It's just an old man slouched in a chair with a basket of something around his feet. We could tell that he has apples down there, and he has some packages wrapped in brown paper. I don't know what they are. But then, Mark, you came up with this, right? Yeah. Yeah, Mark, what Mark found the picture on the right in a book. And it tells a story of who Uncle Billy was, known as the Pretzel Man. Sadly, he had the gripping influence of Bacchus, poor man. And subsequent to this being posted, you also posted a series of little newspaper clippings on how he's progressing because he was found in an alley, or he was drunk, or he's in a hospital, and every day there seemed to be a new little episode of how Uncle Billy is doing. He was well known. Uh-huh. He opened his own barber shop in 1861. Yeah.
And then it became more of a pretzel with the streets, giving people advice.
Giving people advice, sage advice.
We got people in the office raise money.
Right. They raised $35 to bury the poor man. Yeah. I don't know where he was buried. But what's interesting on many of these photographs, well, on all of them that we see were used in some capacity, is that you can tell that that photograph is the one that is now in the possession of the Historical Society. So it's obvious where that photo came from. It came from that glass plate, which is at this Historical Society. And many of these images were used in printed form. I entitled this Photogenic #1. Now, these are some of the most attractive people that I have in our collection of portraits. This mother with 2 children on the far left is just charming. The girl with the big hat, the second one in from the left. Remember I was telling you about the stand that is used to help them stand still? Well, there's an example. If you look behind her feet, you can see the base of a steel stand with the pole extending up behind her that has some sort of a cup or a U-shaped device that she can probably lean up against to keep her head still. Steve, what do you think? I don't know.
It depends on the date.
Yeah. This one actually looks like she was probably about 1890 or 1900.
She's indoors, maybe 2 seconds.
Yeah, 2 seconds, yeah. The third one in from the left, she has exquisite clothing, which we got a kick out of. And the young girl to the far right, she just has such a charming little face. But I notice how Byerly uses, bye-bye, good seeing you. How Byerly uses carpeting as a prop. In several of his photos, he just throws the carpet over a chair and somehow it works. This is photogenic #2. Again, a series of attractive people. I love the ones with ladies wearing big hats. The one in the center is her wearing a hat, standing, but she's also sitting and in the oval, and she's not wearing a hat. And that little baby, can you get any more precious than that? Here's some distinguished looking gentlemen. The one on the left, we don't know who he is. The one in the middle, we know that he's Ames Hendrickson. And the right, we have ourselves a Delaplane. Robert Edmondson Delaplane. He's in his Masonic outfit. And we have service members. Navy, Army, and we have one gentleman in the middle with his wife. I had never seen a corsage attached to a woman's chest, as in this case. We have another couple images of her wearing this corsage attached to her belt in some capacity or in some way. Now, this is pretty funny. Our records show this cute little girl. That's not a girl. It's Dr. Albert Austin Peer. He's shown in the frame, the photograph that's in the frame, that's this little child. And the man in the frame, he's being held by his son, who retired when this photograph was taken, I guess 2017, after 50 years as a local doctor. But that's pretty fancy embroidery work on that young boy too.
So the image on the left,
It's this man. Yeah, this. Puri is how you pronounce it. Help me out here. What did I do? I think my knuckle hit it.
Just go back.
We're almost there.
Uh,
There we go. Okay.
Is that where you wanted to go?
Yeah, the next one will do.
Okay. You can just hit the arrow key if you want to go beyond.
Now, this image is an example of when we have over 1,000 images and we wade through them over the course of a long period of time, and some of these faces look familiar. And lo and behold, we find this gentleman with his family to the far right. Can I make this play from this position?
Yes.
Now I have to do something else.
All right,
Okay. Oh, yeah, we can see it. Okay. So it starts off with the family in the upper right. I'm sorry, the upper left. And then this same gentleman is the second image in from the left. And it's certainly the same image to the far right. So we suspect that it's Judge McSherry. This is a portrait of Judge McSherry in the Maryland State Archives. But is it Judge McSherry? Well, we did some scientific comparisons of their earlobes. And guess what? Inconclusive. A couple people said, yeah, we think their earlobes are the same. Others say, no, I don't think they're the same. So we don't know who this gentleman is, but we do have an interesting series of the two other photographs that shows him progressing in age from the young man to this gray-haired or this gray-bearded gentleman. That's the end of it. Well, those are just 30 of 1,200 images, and they all have really interesting stories behind them. So I would encourage you to join the Maryland,
Stay in front. There you go.
join the Frederick, Maryland Old Photos Facebook page. And I have hashtags that you can click, and with one click of a button, you can see all of these. You can scroll through them all day long. You'll be scrolling through them. And they're also categorized, so you can choose a hashtag just to see the portraits, or just to see the buildings, or just to see the rooftop views, or just to see the churches. So there are a lot of sub hashtags if you want to focus in on a particular specialty area that you want to see more about. Well, I have enjoyed speaking with you. If you didn't enjoy me, blame Cam. She's the one who invited me. Thank you.
do we have any questions? Including our Zoom participants.
Question over here? Uh-huh.
Have you ever used one of these programs to recognize faces and learn your pictures?
Facial recognition, no. The closest I've gotten is playing with animating a face, but no, not facial recognition.
Like you can get through the app out there, couple apps out there, that look at everybody's face and then categorize them. And they-
No, I haven't, but what I did do is I took old Mr. McSherry, who we think is Mr. McSherry, and I did a Google search. You can do a Google search by images. So it said, what image do you want us to find? And I gave him a picture of old Mr. McSherry with that long gray beard. And boom, 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 boom. Hundreds of gentlemen of the same appearance popped up on the screen. So, but no, I've never done the facial recognition. Oh,
Okay.
oh, we have a,
Steve is asking if we can go back to one of the slides. So let me go back to find it. And it was here. I've stopped the show, I thought.
There you go.
So if we go to
Mr. McSherry.
that one, just, there we go.
Here. Okay, there's who we think is Mr. McSherry.
Based on the facial hair.
Facial hair, yeah.
I leave the painting out because that's already.
Okay, right. Uh-huh.
Based on the facial hair, these are all before 1890,
Okay,
because that kind of crazy beard.
Yes,
was
yes.
out By 1890.
that kind of crazy beard was out by 1890s or so. So,
Shade.
and yeah, and if you look at the attire, this was certainly in the upper right. Yeah, in the upper left, it certainly looks like around 1880. So yes,
I
uh-huh,
think the drop early.
yeah.
Okay. But, the whole beard thing.
Right.
Got old. And suddenly everybody shaves. They have mustaches, but they don't do. that
They don't
kind
do
of
the beard, but they do today, don't they? Beards are back, everybody. Beards are back.
Yeah, but not.
No, no. Well, some of them are. Thank you for pointing that out. All right.
Oh, gosh. Well. If, me end the show again and stop the share. So thank you so much. This was so informative and it was so fun to see parts of Frederick that, we know and love. I mean, thank goodness for the spires, because the spires really help anchor a shot in where we know where things are. Are there any questions from anybody in our Zoom audience for David? Is our Zoom audience awake? Okay. Oh, good. The interpreters are still on the job. Thank you. Okay, so yes, thank you so much. And like I say, read your email blast, please, and help out with the show that's coming up and get me some information about what photograph you want to have in the show, please, because we have to fill that big room in the back of the gallery for December. We need to get it going. Okay, I guess we're going to end the recording, and that's it for tonight. Thank you very much.